Kurt, if you could go back to that first year of superintendent, what advice would you give your first year self?
Um, I think a couple key things that I feel really good about in the beginning was just giving the different stakeholder groups a severe listening to instead of going in kind of thinking I know everything, going the other way, that these people actually have a lot to contribute and you need to hear from each different stakeholder group and your voice as a leader will come naturally. It'll emerge from that.
Ray, who's been your biggest influence?
Probably my biggest influence has been my family. I grew up on a large family farm and I had ancestors and grandparents and parents and siblings and cousins and learned a lot of valuable lessons about cooperation and hard work and the importance of family and well-being.
And you both take a stab at this. We'll have Kurt go first. What's something people misunderstand about your story or your work?
I think at the system leadership level, there's a real misunderstanding about what motivates system leaders, in my opinion. I remember having someone say to me once, "Yeah, I would never do that. I like kids too much." And that really kind of stung because the people I've worked with for 20 some years in central office, they care about kids more than you can imagine. And system leaders, they kind of take it on the chin. They're not always respected for the difficult decisions they need to make. And I think it's really important people understand that these are child-centered people who want to make a difference for individuals through a system lens.
I think one thing I misunderstood early on was I thought the work was in my office and on the screen, and some of the most important work I think I learned from was out in the school division, in the schools, next to people. And so that's where the work is, and that's who we're supposed to be taking care of.
Reverse your order here, so we'll go to Ray and then to Kurt. What are the most important things this audience needs to know about you to understand your story?
For me, Tyler, I have a toolbox of things that I stole over 33 years, ideas, strategies, and I get energy. I get jazzed up out of sharing those, and that's what drives me. When somebody uses something and they go, thanks, then I rest easy at night knowing I help somebody.
I think a couple things for me is just at the core, like Ray, I'm a people-centered leader. Like I really care about the kids, I care about the staff, I care about the people I work with. And then I try to blend that with, a quote from Covey that has never escaped me, that the system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And so when something's not working, we can get upset or we can look and see if it's not a system piece that needs to be changed. And it's that system piece that's impacting the people. So if you want to know me, it's a blend of the people-centeredness with understanding the system and also definitely paying attention to the research that's out there in education.
And who was more thankful for going second because they had more time to think?
Me.
There it is. This is Elemental Conversations, where leadership isn't just talked about, it's tested. I'm Tyler, your host, helping you lead with your values, push through adversity, roll with change, and make bold decisions. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, and if you're ready to challenge the status quo, then get ready to let the alchemy of education ignite your passion for learning.
Fire, earth, wind, water. This is the Elemental Educator. And now your host, Tyler Como.
Alchemists, welcome to a new episode. Today, I'm excited to welcome two remarkable leaders who have shaped education and leadership in Alberta for decades. Kurt Sacher recently retired after 15 years as superintendent of Chinook's Edge School Division, following 8 years as assistant superintendent of People Services in Wolf Creek Public Schools. With 39 years of teaching and administrative experience, including roles as a head teacher, principal, and system leader, Kurt has built a legacy of developing leaders and strengthening schools. He shared his expertise at StartRight for over 22 years and leading and learning for more than a decade, served as the president of CAS, and was awarded the CAS EXL Award for Excellence in System-Level Leadership in 2021. Today, he continues his work as a leadership consultant through Sacher Solutions. Ray Hoppins brings a complementary path as a corporate trainer, speaker, and human resources consultant. Before founding Hoppins People Services, he spent 33 years in education as an associate superintendent and chief human resource officer with Chinook's Edge. For more than 25 years, Ray has led workshops and courses on human resources, communication, wellness, and culture, helping school divisions, post-secondaries, corporations, and not-for-profits grow leaders and inspire teams. Together, Kurt and Ray combine deep system-level leadership experience with a passion for building people, organizations, and culture. I'm thrilled to have them both here to share their insights on leadership, growth, and what it takes to truly support each other. Welcome to the Elemental Educator podcast, Kurt and Ray. It is my pleasure to host you today.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler.
All right, and we spent some times getting into some serious heavy-hitting questions here at the start. We're going to use that to segue into what we truly value. And so with that being said, we're going to jump into our first show segment, which is Grounded Moments. Hey, Alchemists, my one request before we get into our first segment, it would mean everything to me if you head over to our YouTube channel and subscribed. Growing the channel enables me to bring on incredible guests like the ones we hear today and continue delivering the best show I can for you. Now, let's get into it.
3, 2, 1.
Moments is all about our values. And there's no better way to see what we truly stand for than to play a game. And I've actually got two games for us today, Ray and Kurt. And without telling you which one's going to get which, I want to see who wants to go first.
Kurt.
There it is. Kurt, our first game is Principle or Preference. You have the easy game. I'm going to give you 10 questions that feel fun but force deeper thought, and your job is to tell me whether it is a principle, which means something everybody should adopt, or a preference, meaning it's okay if not everybody takes it on. Make sense?
Yeah.
It is rapid fire, so there is no time for explanations. Let's get into it. Principle or preference, staff well-being always comes before test scores.
Principle.
Leadership should be visible in the hallways daily.
Principle.
Hiring from within the division whenever possible.
Preference.
Every meeting must have an agenda.
Preference.
Sports and extracurriculars are just as important as academics.
Principle.
Leaders should share their personal struggles with staff.
Preference.
Student voice should always shape policy.
Preference.
No email responses after 6 p.m.
Principle.
And a superintendent should always be the first to address the media.
Preference.
There we go. That is principle or preference for Kurt. Thank you so much for playing. Ray, I said it was the easier one, but yours is actually just as easy too. Every leader starts somewhere, and it's usually not the most glamorous place. I've got 2 minutes on the clock to guess your first job. So what I need you to do is think of your first paying job, and don't tell me I've got 2 minutes to guess with only being able to ask yes or no questions. So you let me know when you are ready to give it a try.
Okay, I'm ready.
Got your first job. I'll get my clock here set. 2 minutes. Here we go. Was it indoors?
No.
Did it involve a food service?
No.
Did you earn tips?
No.
Did you have to wear a uniform?
I did not.
Was it part-time during school?
No, it was not.
Did you have to work evenings or weekends?
Yes.
Okay. Was it seasonal?
Yes.
And it was outdoors.
Yes.
Okay. Did you interact with customers?
No.
Was it the summer, the hot, nah, I can't ask that. Was it summer season?
Yes.
Okay. Did you clean as a part of the job?
Yes.
Okay. Was it for a big company chain or yourself?
Neither.
Okay. Was it physical labor?
Yes.
Were your clients adults or kids?
Adults.
Did you need training or a certificate?
No.
Did your friends do the same job that you did?
No.
Is it a typical job that people take on now still?
Yes.
Okay. Does it involve some kind of landscaping?
Yes.
Okay. Did you mow people's lawns? Did you go around door to door and you were mowing lawns?
No.
Okay. Did you maintain a golf course?
No.
Okay. Were you just a landscaper? You got contracted out to different houses to do landscaping?
No.
Okay. Oh man, I got 13 seconds here. Okay. Were you doing like construction work, working for like a city?
No.
Okay, well, there's our 2 minutes. You can either tell us what your first job was, or you can keep it to yourself.
I'm proud that my first job was from Hoppins Farms Limited to work on the farm. I was a farm laborer as part of a large family farm. It was an awesome way to get your first gig.
There we go. What a great way to start. And what I want to know from that, being a farm laborer, what did that first job teach you about leadership?
I think one of the first lessons was you got to get it done. I remember at about 4:30 in the afternoon driving by the farm. I thought we were going for supper, and we had three more things to do and had to get it done. And I was young, and I thought, oh, we need to break for supper. No, we have a few more things to do, so get her done. So it was a good lesson for me.
And Kurt, thinking back to your first jobs you've taken on, you can share what they were or not. What did they teach you about leadership that helped you in your latest role?
I think the first big job I had was Dairy Queen, and taught me about just serving people. And the boss I had at the time, he had high expectations, so we learned how to work hard. I think, later on going to university and cutting lawns and working with the facilities department in Rocky View School Division taught me another component of education that I'm glad I had that experience to this day.
Children are doorways into our own humanity. That's a quote that Kurt gave me before coming on the show. And my question for you, Kurt, is why did you choose this? Where did it come from? And why bring it on the show?
It comes from Barry Neil Kaufman, who wrote a book called Giant Steps. There was a movie made about the book called Sunrise on NBC, and I bet you it goes back to like 1980, somewhere in that time frame. But a lady I worked with at an alternative school in Penticton would often cite that individual, recommended the book. And the story about this autistic child was how the parents went against the way people typically dealt with autism, which was you're doing a stimming behavior, clapping your hands, stop it. You need to stop it. And what this family did was they spent time in the bathroom, like 12 hours with this kid, rolling a toilet paper roll or spinning plates at the supper table. And the main point was they accepted the child and went into his world, and they helped him kind of come out of that world into their world. And it was a way of trusting people and not trying to control them as you guide them. And that has affected how I look at education for my entire career. And I was saying to Ray earlier this morning that it also influences how I look at our children. They're almost like a canary in the coal mine. And when you see the kind of the anxiety that our young children present at schools with increasing complexity, and you look at the correlation with the arrival of cell phones and so on, To me, they're doorways into our own humanity. How are we doing? I think we should judge ourselves by how well our children are doing. So it affects, I could go on and on, it affects a lot of the things that I look at in life, including my own children. They let me see a little bit more into who I am based on my experiences with them.
And that's a tough thing. It must be a tough thing to do because we crave and like control, because control, when we're in it, we feel safer to be in that environment. To give yourself to the control of others and to take on what the others are doing, it's a difficult thing. But as you said, it opens up something really important, which is that human connection that people really strive for. How do you find that balance, though, between giving into that control and still wanting to stay in control?
Yeah, it's a delicate road as a teacher or as a leader. You're taught very early as a new teacher that you better have control of the kids. That would have been the early line from my father, who's an educator as well. And what's interesting about it is you actually can't control them. They control their own behavior. You can set expectations, you can create routines, you can make it very likely or more likely that they'll behave and respond. But at the end of the day, it's up to them. And I do think it's important right up until when they graduate and they're trying to make decisions about their future. We have a temptation to know what's best for them and select their path. And it needs to be their path. And we need to let them engage in their own direction.
One of the things I was always told early on is always do what's best for kids. And it was very quickly that I shifted that not shifted that, but thought of, well, sometimes I know what's best for kids, but that was a completely wrong statement of me to even think about in the beginning. Because as you just said, if we do what we know or what we think is best for kids, it might not always be what is best for that child. So I appreciate the extension on that. While I was complaining about the little things in my life, somebody was actually fighting for theirs. And this is the quote that Ray shared before coming on the show. And Ray, I would like to know, where did you find this quote and why did you choose to bring it on the show today?
So I believe it's an anonymous quote. I haven't ever seen it attributed to anyone, but early on when I began working in people services, I quickly discovered so many valuable lessons where even, as myself, I was complaining about little things. And then I was responsible for taking care of people that were actually fighting for their lives, dealing with really serious things. And it was a good reminder for me that whether I ordered yellow paper and got canary colored paper, that stuff doesn't matter. The human touch and the contact and taking care of people, that's what mattered. And so that quote kept coming back to me. The first time I saw it was online, and I realized it echoed some of the advice from people that came before me. I think of my father when I used to complain, he'd go, "Wait a second, does hot water come out of the tap? Do you have running water? Do you have clothes? Do you have food?" Or my uncle, who was a superintendent in Alberta as well. I used to be in complaining mode, and he used to say, "Well, wait a second, did you apply for your job?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "Do you like working?" "Yes." "It's time to get busy." So I think it's easy to fall into complaining, and I've done it. And I need quotes like that or leaders, mentors to jostle me out of it.
One of my favorite quotes is, high expectations is an act of love and low expectations is an act of empathy. And that actually came from somebody that presented at Start Right. And I grabbed it and I've hung on to it for a few years here. And I'm curious with that, I would interpret that. How do you balance that line, Ray, between you still want to set and hold these high expectations versus it's okay to go with the flow and then get to work if you need to around it?
I think it's really important to remember that organizations are all about people. Schools are about children, staff, parents, families. And so you have high expectations, but you have to honor the needs of those that you serve. And so you have to combine those things. I was in a school recently talking to a grade 1 boy, and I found out he played hockey. So I had expectations of where this conversation's going, and I said, "Hey, what's your favorite team?" Thinking we'd talk about the Calgary Flames or the Edmonton Oilers. And he looked at me and he said, "My favorite team? Well, the one I'm on." And so my expectations of how things are going to go often have to adjust. The misconception is that high expectations and positive relationships are mutually exclusive. They're not. They go hand in hand. And I found we get farther when we honor both sides of that equation.
I appreciate the additional insight there. Now, from this, we've established what we think of a team is and how a team can start to work. Kurt, what are the top 3 things you look for in team members?
The first one, the ultimate key, in my opinion, is actually the leader. And if you look at a school, the principal is absolutely key when it comes to a high performing or highly functional team. And from that, I think obviously trust, that whole basis of trust and having healthy conflict, which can, using Lencioni's work, can lead to really strong commitments, holding each other accountable, peer-to-peer accountability, which is really difficult for people, and ultimately focusing on results or your scoreboard. And I don't just mean provincially authorized ones. It's like, what is important to you as a team? You need to get there, but you can't get anywhere if you don't have trust and if you don't have strong vulnerability based trust and a strong leader.
Ray, do you agree, disagree? Would you order those differently?
No, I'd probably order them the same. I think the start is really important as a team. And I've watched some really good leaders put intentional steps into how are we going to launch this team. So taking away my first experience as part of a central team, this guy, Kurt, took us away from the action to set the stage. And I think that start is really powerful. I see lots of really strong principals do exactly the same thing. They take their team to set the stage early on. So that's the only thing I'd add.
So if you were to go back into that role, and maybe it's not principalship, maybe it's your first management position that you end up getting, how do you make sure that you set that stage in a way to start right?
Honestly, I think listening, Tyler. I think sometimes people like me, we do the agenda and it's awesome and it's all set to go, but we forgot to ask people what they want out of the experience. We forgot to ask them, what are you hoping to gain today? What's one thing you hope this isn't? What do you need? And by asking those questions, I might change the scope or pathway that I've got planned for the day. So I think that's one really important lesson that I've learned is to see where the team wants to go and how I help them and serve them. And now as I work with organizations and corporations, it's really important that I ask that I don't show up and start throwing out all my things. I got to see what they need.
And if we don't set the stage right to start right, if we're not listening, we're creating a system where down the road we're going to be facing more problems than what we could have probably proactively prevented. And so with that, we're actually going to jump into talking about adversity, and that's going to bring us to our Air Element segment on headwinds and tailwinds. And to get into the comfort zone of another element, we are going to play another game. I've got one game at the start and one game at the end. And because Kurt went first last time, by default, Kurt goes first again. I'm not switching it. So, Kurt, right, adversity doesn't wait, and neither can you. This is the hot seat. Quick adversity, quick answers. I'm going to give you a real world challenge that leaders face, and you've got 10 seconds to give us your first move. Okay. Okay. You discover staff are burned out mid-year. What's your immediate action?
Listen to them.
A parent group starts a petition against policy. How would you respond?
Again, I'd want to understand them. Where are they coming from? Get more details. Listen to them.
Your leadership team disagrees on a big decision. What's your first step?
Talk it through because I truly believe the solution will emerge from the group if you just have faith in them.
And a new initiative flops in the first month. What do you do first?
You need to reflect and figure out, which pieces were missed and try to understand it.
And last one's a big one here. A board trustee challenges your decisions publicly. What's your first move?
I would want to understand them and talk to them and maybe work with the board chair and later the board to see if there's a better path forward.
It's fascinating to hear your responses in those because my head goes, when people are training in the military and they're training on special forces teams, they're training in negotiations, the one thing that they're taught to do is to try to create space for more time because that's the one thing you can't just buy. But if you can create a space for it, you can create space for people to think, you can create space for conversation, you can create space for emotions to be removed and to get down to what you need to get down to. And so in all of your responses, what I heard is you would create more time by listening, by talking through, by having that first conversation. And I want to jump into a question for you again, Kurt, here, which is what is something you had to unlearn from your process of career development?
I think just in the very beginning, what I had mentioned earlier about control. As a teacher, I remember getting really upset with a kid in my first year because he called me Kurt. And later I would work in an environment where we worked on a first name basis and it was perfectly functional. And so it was that notion of I'm in this power position, I need to control, shifting it to I need to work alongside these children, have faith in them. Yes, you need expectations and boundaries, but you don't need to be a control freak.
And how do you find that balance?
I think just really being centered on what matters and what you're trying to do. And I also think having faith that the people you're working with, all these different constituents as a leader, they have a lot to offer. And Ray often uses the line that the room as a whole, that's the smartest person in the room. And so your job is to draw out all those voices and gain power by giving it away and trust that a sensible solution will emerge if you listen carefully to the different pieces you need to listen to.
One of the things I hear from what you're saying is you have a lot of trust in people. You have a lot of trust in humans. And that even showed up on the form, on my intake form. I say, what can I do to make things comfortable? And you said, I trust your judgment, Tyler. And I'm sitting here and I go, how does this guy that has never really had an interaction conversation with me have so much trust? Where does this come from? And how are you able to just willingly open it and give it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know for sure where it comes from, but I do. I get burned the odd time, no question. But I believe as leaders, you're far better off to trust people, generally speaking, than to assume the worst in them. I've always believed, whether it's students or adults, which are just kids that got older, is that they're far more capable than you think they are. People prove that to us time and time again. And so that's how I've gone about leadership.
That's a great stance to look at it. And another thing of Covey's work was leader in me, and the idea that everybody has the potential to have leadership qualities. I'm not a firm believer in everything that Covey's put out, but there are a couple things that I like that he's done, and one of them is to just establish that belief in other people that everybody has that potential to be a leader, and to find it in them, you have to have trust in them. And what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you put them in the role to evaluate it first, or do you trust them to take on the role first? That's always something that's difficult and tricky to navigate. But if you start with the trust, you open up the potential that person might have. So I appreciate the insight there. Ray, what has been one of the biggest mistakes you felt you've made in the development of your career, and how did you overcome it?
I got many to choose from. That's why I'm hesitating. But honestly, I think one of the biggest mistakes I made early on in leadership roles is I had convinced myself I had to solve all the problems and come up with the solutions. So I can remember one time a teacher, it was Friday, and She just said, "Oh, kids were, challenging today. I'm tired." And I went into problem solving mode. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And she said, "Just wait a second. I'm actually just venting because I trust you. I'll be fine. Kids will be fine." And she gave me really powerful advice that I didn't need to solve every problem. I just need to listen. And so I think the mistake I made, sometimes I would go in to solve all these problems before truly just listening to people to be able to respond. And so I learned over time that I just have to, talk less and listen more.
And that's actually a very tough skill to build. And, I see it all the time with even myself with my own kid, right? I have a 3-year-old, and every time she comes crying because something's hurt, I want to jump in and help right away. And I often try 2 different things before I realize, oh, she's hungry, or, oh, she has to go to the bathroom. And how do we tiptoe and find that line between, well, not tiptoe, but how do we train that skill of not listening to respond, but listening to understand?
Well, I think Ted Lasso has it right, and he stole it from Walt Whitman, being curious, not judgmental. And I really, the more that I learned about asking questions, even on my 4 kids, the more I was just curious on what they were thinking, what was going to happen. And going in with curiosity is so much better and powerful than going in with judgment. So being curious is a move that never goes out of style and can't lead you astray as a leader.
And okay, so 4 kids, this is going to be an adversity question here. I've got my 3rd one coming on the way. What should I be expecting for adversity, and how do I overcome that hurdle?
Chaos and comedy.
Yeah.
We had 4 kids in 5 years.
Yeah.
And
holy cow.
There were so many times where we would just go, what's happening here? And then we would laugh and laugh and laugh. And so there were times I was working, my wife was this unbelievable stay-at-home mom, and I would get home and she would just hand me the 2 little ones, and the other ones were still toddlers, and she's like, "You got them." And she just needed time. But we have so many great memories and laughter, and now our kids are adults and we love seeing them. So my advice is, don't lose a second of that connection with your kids. Don't trade it for anything in the world. So I learned that lesson from advice from others. I pass it along to you.
I appreciate the advice there. Now, we're going to move on to the second game, which means it's now Ray's turn. We're taking the toughest challenges leaders face and flipping them into power. This is Flip the Script. I'm going to share a negative belief about adversity, and I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to think and then share about how to flip it into an empowering reframe. Make sense?
Sure.
Okay. Give me 1 sec here. I'll have to trim this section. Midway through wanting to set that up, it disappeared.
Seems like I have the tougher game, Tyler. I don't know if...
Well, you definitely have, yeah, it is a little bit tougher. Okay, here we go. Let me grab these. Let me throw them in. Okay, so conflict in schools always divides communities.
I think seeking what actually unites those schools or communities is your pathway forward. Sometimes the challenge is the pathway forward. So seeing what actually unites them.
Change is too disruptive for staff morale.
If you can find the change that people truly see as helpful and they can see the benefits of it, you can actually experience a great deal of success, not for you as the leader, but for the people you serve.
Micromanagement is the only way to get things done.
Sometimes if you get the right simple tool and you share it, even though it might come across as micromanagement, once you've nailed the strategy and people want to steal it and use it, there can be great service to others in that.
If a leader shows vulnerability, people lose respect.
I actually think the opposite. People will appreciate vulnerability and see that we're all just trying to do our best.
And mistakes in leadership ruin credibility.
I think the mistakes are from where we learned. We've got so many examples between Kurt and I where we'd like a do-over, and that's where we learn. That's where we decide what we want to do next and how we're going to make things better.
Now, I'm curious. The episode that comes out before this one, it was a conversation with Dr. Greg Wells, and we defined a difference between the word mistake and the word failure. And by definition, on his end, mistake is something that is bad and we shouldn't be making, and we should be avoiding mistakes at all costs. But failure was something that would happen and that leads to success and leads to growth. How would you define the two, and do you see that the same way as he's describing it?
I actually see it a little bit differently. I see mistakes as those things that you can recover from, and maybe I see failure as for myself as times where I've just given up. And so I see failure as, yeah, I don't have any strategies left. Sometimes when you've made some mistakes, we need to ask for help and avoid that ultimate failure. But overall, they probably are closer in my mind to similar times where we just have to learn and try another strategy, get some help, look outside our little cocoon, and find ways to move forward.
I like the contrast in that. And, talking about mistakes, failures, ways to move forward, reframing mindsets, we're starting to talk about change and the changes we take. And that's going to bring us to our third segment, our water element. And we're going to get into ripples of change. Alchemists, before we get into our third elemental segment here, if you're enjoying the content from Kurt and Ray, I'm going to ask that you head to the links in the description. You go and you check out their websites. You check out their channels. You support them. And if you're somebody listening that says, I would love to work with them, reach out. They've got their emails down there below. Send them an email. Introduce yourself. I'm sure they're happy to work with you. Let's get into ripples of change. Now, I've got one game, 5 questions, and we'll just alternate who goes where. And, Kurt's been so thankful to go first. We'll just keep that trend rolling in the group here. And so this is quick tips. I'm just going to ask a question that needs a solution, and I need one quick tip right now, and we'll just alternate the questions to you guys. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. So, Kurt, what's your quick tip for handling stress?
Ride my bicycle. So do something physical. Go for a walk.
Go for a walk. Ride your bicycle. I love it. Ray, what's your quick tip for focusing fast?
Have a time in your day that you just have you and the task. Deep work, quiet time.
Kurt, what's your quick tip for leading when you're short on time?
Just bookmark it for another time when I know I'm going to be efficient. Probably the next morning.
And Ray, what's a quick tip for motivating staff in tough seasons?
Be there beside them.
And Kurt, what's a quick tip for handling conflict between colleagues?
Listen to both sides of it and allow a solution to emerge.
And I know I said 5, but we'll do another one here as well. Ray, what is your quick tip for leading? What's your quick tip for leading through conflict?
Make sure you understand what problem you're trying to solve. Sometimes we put all the strategies in before knowing what we're trying to solve.
Now, question for, I guess, the group here is kind of a discussion. What steps do you take when you have to change something?
I think go ahead, Kurt.
You always want to go first.
Always the problem.
I think you just nailed it, though, about first really being clear on what problem are you trying to solve, really getting that clear. Over to you, Ray.
Yeah, I think once you identify the problem, it's a matter of collecting what could we do? What are some ideas? What are some strategies? What haven't we thought of? What don't we know? And then what ideas can we steal? For many of us, there's hundreds of people doing the same thing that we're doing right now, very close to us. So it's a matter of stealing solutions and ideas.
And I think once you get it going, Tyler, and maybe even before you get it going, having ways for people to communicate during implementation, as Fullen talks about, I'm a huge believer in that, hey, we've got it up and running, we're going to roll, but how are we going to communicate throughout the change process to take the edges off it and make it actually work for us?
Just to add to that, a lot of times, we'll put draft on something just to let those that we serve know this isn't locked in. We want your feedback. What do you think? And then the other piece that I sometimes help organizations with is doing what I call a soft opening, like Vegas. Like just try it a little bit in little bits, and you'll quickly see what people think of it. And if it's going to work, you don't have to go 100% right off the bat. So stealing things from Vegas isn't a bad thing.
I think just to build on Ray's point, the notion of piloting, where the collateral damage can be smaller before you reframe it and go big with it. I think Apple as a company is known for that historically, and I think organizations can learn a lot from piloting, small sample size, get it right, and then go bigger.
So how do you know when a change even needs to happen?
I really think people tell you. And I'm thinking of times where we've gone around and had dozens or hundreds of conversations. People will tell you when it's time to make a change.
Yeah, and I think organizations that are really healthy are like a healthy family, and they have ways to communicate. So they've got processes that are embedded, so different stakeholders are constantly communicating. And as Ray mentioned, you're going to hear about it. It's going to play out negatively somewhere, and you need to figure it out.
How do you communicate change? And is there one streamlined way to communicate it amongst people?
You need to get the why right. Like right out of the gate, why are we doing this? That needs to be clear. And then, as I said earlier, have a plan for once you start rolling it out, how are we going to communicate during implementation?
I think too, internal communication and external communication get equal billing when you're implementing change. I think sometimes a mistake I made was I was all focused on external communication, and I forgot to get the internal and my own team up to speed. So you have to honor both those as you're moving forward.
And I've done the reverse from a system perspective, where you get the internal communication is tremendous, but we haven't maybe communicated as well with the parents and the external public. And so you need to think of all of those pieces.
And how do you make that change last?
I think it's checking back. We have a line about how's my driving, and you see it on vehicles going down the highway. How's my driving? Leaders are often surprised when they check back a year later or 18 months later. How did this work out? Is it everything we thought? And so that check back is so important as change becomes institutionalized in our organizations.
I think you need to plan fiscally for how are you going to continue to support the change. You need to think about leadership succession planning. When new leaders come on and old ones like Ray and I, more Ray than me, but we clock out and we move on. How are you developing the next level of leadership so that the change can be perpetuated into the future?
I appreciate that very much. And change is always something that's so difficult because people fear unknown, but people want change in scenarios that aren't working. is there a way to motivate people to have them believe that change is going to be okay and change can be fun and exciting?
I think the why is critically important. You really need to get that right. But some people, they don't want the change, and sometimes they just actually need to see it and get in it and roll with it, and then they'll figure it out. So everyone's different. Every change process is so contextual to who's in that environment.
I would just add on that we always want to know how change is going to help us. And I think that's really important to think about when we're implementing change. In 2018, we through a staff health and wellness survey, we found out people were exhausted. And one of the major reasons why, we were sending stuff out evenings and weekends and interrupting their family time. And so when we thought about having something called weekdays till 6, where we didn't send emails and texts out on evenings and weekends, it was at first a little alarming that we were going to suggest when people send stuff. But once people saw that they got to regain their weekends for their own well-being and their families, they were champions of that change. And so I think that's really important, that we know how's this change going to improve my life?
Yeah. People want to see that.
With that change that Ray talks about, there would have been leaders who at 7:30 at night are like, I'm not doing that. I'm going to send it out anyway because I'll forget. Well, they needed skills like how to send an email the next morning at 8 o'clock. You can actually still get your work done at 7:30 if that's what you need to do on a Thursday. But everyone else doesn't need to get your email and feel guilty that they're not working. And so part of my point about change is sometimes people just don't know what else to do. The other thing I would say is some of them needed to look at themselves as to the clock they're running on, because Ray and I are big believers that when you're working late in the evening as a habit, you're borrowing from the next day and you're actually inefficient. And you can ask Ray about his 53-hour rule, but we do believe there's a sweet spot with how much is too much and where are we our best selves as leaders.
Well, I mean, I guess this became Kurt's hosting job to interview, but Ray, tell me about your 53-hour rule.
Yeah, so for about 10 years, I've been researching the work week and have learned a lot from teachers, support staff, leaders, people that work in municipalities, post-secondaries. And here's the gist. You can work more than 53 hours in a week, but it doesn't usually add value. And all you're doing is borrowing from your well-being or your family. And for myself, I was not more effective working 68 hours than I was 53. And we've got some really powerful examples in organizations that have planned this. They map it out like clockwork. And that's where the success rate seems to be. By the way, there are countries now that have basically brought this in as legislation. You just simply cannot do it. So I've been fascinated about that change. But when a guy like me shows up and tells Kurt Sacher, you shouldn't be working this number of hours, it causes a few ripples a little bit.
Now, are you sure it wasn't like 33? That was 55.3?
5-3.
There we go. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about our values, the adversity we faced, and how to go about making change to respond to some of that adversity we faced. Those can become difficult, and we're going to get into the decision-making processes of that now. So we're going to go into our fire element and our last elemental segment here on spark or burn. And when every decision matters, you only get to pick one. This is final answer. I'm going to give two tough options, and with no explanations, no backing out, you just have to pick the would you rather. Which one would you rather do? We're going to have Ray respond first to these, and then Kurt, you're going to respond to the same ones, and we're going to see if you guys would pick the same things or different.
Okay.
Okay? Would you rather lead a school with endless resources but constant conflict, or no resources but perfect harmony?
No resources and perfect harmony.
You want mine?
Yeah, right to you.
Yeah, okay, I better wake up, eh? It's the exact same as Ray. Yeah.
Oh, is this will be the trend? Here we go. Would you rather always have? What's that, Kurt?
You never know with us. We don't agree on everything. We get along pretty good, but we don't see the world the same all the time.
That's right. Would you rather always have 8 hours of sleep or 8 extra hours in your day?
8 hours of sleep.
Ditto.
Would you rather manage a team of brilliant but difficult people or average but easygoing people?
I'll take difficult and brilliant.
I
That's Ray.
I think I'm first, Kurt. And yeah, I was going to say I can manage brilliant and difficult because with strategies, we'll figure some things out and we'll get on the same page.
Yeah. Would you rather relive your first year of leadership or skip straight to your retirement?
I would relive my first year of leadership. I loved every minute out of it. And I got some things I do differently, lots of them.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you look at it, but yeah, I'd like to go back in time and fix a few things for sure.
Would you rather handle one huge crisis a year or constant small problems every week?
I'd rather handle small problems every week because I think you serve more people and help more people, and that's what gives me energy.
Yeah, and I'm the same, I think, just because that's what I became accustomed to over the years. There was always something going on.
Would you rather be respected but rarely liked or liked but rarely respected?
I'd like to be, that's a tough one. I'd like to be respected.
And rarely liked, yeah.
Yeah, and rarely liked. I think that's important.
Yeah, I've always said for education that the key thing you're after is not a popularity contest, but it is a respect contest. And I'd take the respect every day of the week.
Would you rather have every policy decision go your way or every culture building effort succeed?
Every culture building effort succeed.
Yeah, ditto.
Would
Culture
you
wins
rather?
every time.
I agree. Would you rather speak to 5,000 strangers or mentor 5 people for 5 years?
I'd rather mentor 5 people for 5 years.
I'm the same, Tyler. Sorry, we haven't found a different.
No, being the same is perfectly okay. Would you rather always be the face of tough decisions or always work behind the scenes?
I'd like to work behind the scenes. I think that's where the action is sometimes for me as a leader.
Yeah, in my role, a lot of it was in, the face of the organization, but I far rather doing the work behind the scenes, when no one's looking, so to speak.
And last one here, would you rather make one bold decision that defines your career or hundreds of small ones that nobody notices?
Hundreds that no one notices. Because I think each one of those makes a difference in the life of a child or a staff member or my own family.
Yeah, and I think if we're making the ones that no one notices, it's because other people are taking the credit, they're gaining the confidence, and leadership is all about the leaders we leave behind, Tyler.
Absolutely. Now, each of you can take a turn at this if you'd like, or we can just give it to Kurt for now and call it a day. What's the hardest decision you ever had to make as a leader?
Ray can take that one first. I'm trying to think of what comes to mind right off the gate there.
For me, the hardest decision that I had to make, there were a lot of them that fell into the same category, Tyler. So because I was in people services, we had competition for leadership roles with so many outstanding leaders, really good people that were great at their jobs. And having to select one out of a pool of powerful leaders was really difficult. To add to the difficulty, they were people that I knew, respected, trusted, and that was always difficult.
Tyler, I had a similar role as well for 8 years in Wolf Creek. And then as a superintendent, you're dealing with personnel issues. And I guess the ones that always made me sick to my stomach were when we felt like the employment relationship needed to end. And when I go back in time, there's a few where I know it was a mistake, and I don't feel great about the situation. Many were difficult, but all of those were really hard. People, their work life is so connected to who they are as a human being that um, those were the ones that bothered me the most.
How do you separate the emotion from the logic when you have to make that decision?
Well, I think you need to be careful not to separate too much emotion and really have empathy for you're having a huge impact on this individual, their family, their situation. There's organizational considerations about what's the message this sends to everyone. And I'm always a big believer in the importance of hiring properly to begin with and proper onboarding and support. And so when an employment relationship falls apart, to me, it's a failure on everyone's part that we need to take a hard look at ourselves. Why did that happen? Not that that's a typical way we need to go about business. At the same time, you can't avoid some of these difficult situations and put your head in the sand and not deal with it. And it may be the only way out. But I think you better agonize a little bit about it, and there should be some emotion going through you as you contemplate a life-changing decision for that individual and a pretty key decision for the organization.
I think in all those tough decisions, the mantra ought to be, what if it was a loved one? What if it was a child, a parent, a sibling? And then that usually drives to some pretty reasonable decisions in how we treat others and communicate and think of the other person.
I think the only other comment on that, Tyler, that Ray and I would be proud of is just if you do need to go through that, it's what's their next step. And if I can't put a lot of energy into saving their employment situation, I certainly can put a lot of energy in helping them get to the next place for them because everyone has a place and we can help them with transition.
That's a really good reframe, Kurt. That actually I don't think has been shared on the show yet. Is you can support that next step process as well, and in doing that, it probably can salvage to a respectable level of the relationship still, which is at the end of the day what we hope for. We hope for what's best for people, right? And to set somebody else up for success in a place where they can thrive. You're definitely achieving that. Ray, how do you make sure your values show up in your choices?
I think keeping in mind who we are and being that person always. One time I was at an office and they asked my occupation, and I said, teacher. And my daughter said, "You're a teacher, Daddy?" She didn't even know I was a teacher. And I quickly realized maybe she didn't see my roots as much as I wanted. And I am a teacher. And so always thinking, what would teachers do to help their students? That drives me. So it's always coming back to that grounded opportunity to be your true self. And that drives the ship.
Now, one of the things that I've done in the show recently that's not live yet, but is coming live, is the previous guest left a question for the new guests to answer. And so at the end of this, I'll have actually each of you leave a question for my next guest, and they'll get to answer 2 questions. But my last interview was with Dr. Greg Wells. And the question that he left, and I'll let both of you take a stab at it here too, is right now, most people agree the world is unwell. Given your knowledge, skills, expertise, what do you think the most important shift for humanity is that we need to move forward?
I believe that we're at our best when we plan our wellness to the same extent that we plan other things in our lives and in our organizations. So, Tyler, we've been talking about school divisions. School divisions have hundreds of buses show up at exactly the same time for the same purpose, safe transportation for kids all the way to the school. It's like clockwork. We need to do that with our own well-being. And so there are atomic habits, to use James Clear's line, that we can implement and take responsibility. And alongside organizations, if you make that in vogue and provide support, then we can win the war on well-being. But you have to plan those specific things, exactly when they are, and they have to be locked in to the calendar because our life depends on it.
Tyler, I would say, in addition to Ray, I'm a big believer in well-being, that you can't give what you don't have as a leader. And so we need to take care of what's going on with the person behind the leader because it's going to leak anyways. And I share a lot on that when I speak to different groups. But if you were asking me a more, like societal question about where's our best hope, I would actually argue strongly for public education in the sense that, yes, it needs to be highly accountable, but I think some people believe that if you separate within public education with the mantra of choice, that you'll create more accountability. And I don't agree with that. I think there's ways to create accountability within a global public education system where everyone has an equitable opportunity to be successful. And back to my point earlier about children are doorways into our own humanity. When we all come together as a community through that public education concept, giving every kid a chance, we need to look at where they struggle. And if we're not meeting their needs, we need to change within the public system. And when I look at other, countries or areas of the world that are falling apart, there's usually a correlation with their public education system falling apart.
I think that's a really great way to look at it as well. And you guys answer and speak so eloquently. I love the responses to just sit and be a sponge and listen to it. It makes me sad that the conversation's coming to an end here, but I am curious from each of you, what question would you like to leave our next guest?
I got one.
Yeah.
Can I go first, Kurt?
Yes. You've been going first all after or all morning.
Thank you for your permission. So a question I have is, what are 3 highly effective strategies is the leader using to get out of the office, get away from the big magnet that pulls them to the office, and go out and serve others, connect with others, be in their space, use proximity, and learn from the people that are out doing the work?
I'm going to read it back to make sure I've captured what it is. What are 3 highly effective strategies you are using to get out of the office, stay away from the office, and serve others?
Yes.
Okay. And Kurt, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. My question for your next person in the hot seat would be around artificial intelligence. Is education going to be better off because of its arrival, or worse off?
So is education going to be better off with the arrival of AI or worse? Okay.
Yeah.
I am so thankful that I don't answer these questions. There we go. I am curious, though. I know that they will be in the link of the description of the show, but if people want to get in touch, get a hold of you guys, what is the best way for them to do so?
Probably for me and for Hoppins People Services would be through LinkedIn. We have a connection there, or our website, hoppins.ca.
Yeah, for me, LinkedIn, the website, 3wsachersolutions.ca, or my email, kurt@sachersolutions.ca.
Perfect. And with that being said, what is a final thought you guys want to leave our listeners with?
I think the one I would lead with is just to continue to have hope and high expectations for public education and the system that we have, and always go about each day. I say to people, there's a million different reasons to wake up and stay angry all day and every day. But why not go the other direction and come into the workday and the workplace going, what's the best I can do today with what I'm up against? I still have the incredible, precious gift of dealing with children and youth, and I can make an incredible difference. I'm going to go out there and knock it out of the park and be the most positive human being every interaction, every day that I can in an education system.
And mine, Tyler, would be, this is as good as it gets. This life that we're all living and the people that we get to work with, it's as good as it gets, and it's unbelievable. So to go out and connect, I look around and I see so many organizations with thousands of good people, and they're 99.999% good, and to go out and enjoy that. That's as good as it gets, and we should draw energy from it.
And Kurt and Ray, I just want to take a moment and say I'm so thankful again for the time that you guys have given up on this morning to sit down, connect, collaborate, and try to create some impact around how we shape leadership. So thank you for taking time.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you for what you're doing, Tyler.
Thanks for sticking around to the end of the show. If you have feedback, a suggestion, or just want to start a conversation, fire off an email to tyler@elementaleducator.com. I actually read them. And if this episode sparks something, leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps more leaders find the show. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, where I put out additional content. I'll see you next time, same place.